Oh boy. Tiger Club Radio, everybody. What's going on? This show is Critical Failure. What number are we up to? Is anybody keeping track anymore? How many of these crazy things I've done? One of these days it's just going to be like, Tiger Club Radio, everybody. This is episode whatever. Or I could do the Xbox thing and just start over again. Maybe when I hit 500 episodes, I'll be like, this is episode 1. TCR 1. Start the whole thing over. I got a hold of some neat games recently, and I got some more cool stuff coming in the mail. So, lots of good stuff to talk about that I'm quite excited about. Also got a pretty major shout out from Gaming Palooza Empire. More on that later. We're gonna talk a bit about the Atari, not the new crazy Atari system that's just a mockery of what used to be Atari. No, I'm talking about the Atari 2600. I'm talking about video game greatness. And you know what? If you've looked at the Atari and said, hey man, I can't really get into that. It's just too old for me. It's just too bare bones. Well, today I'm going to take you to school. And we're going to talk about some Atari. But first, let's play a track not from the chiptune universe, but rather an actual video game OST track. This is from Blaster Master Blasting Again. And you know what? Say what you will about that game. I enjoyed it while I had it, and I really wish I still did have it. That's one on my get list, is that 3D Blaster Master game for the PS1. So this is what it sounds like if you're not familiar. You guys are listening to Tiger Club Radio. Alright guys and gals, let's go to the van. Alright, now this first van cast from Tuesday morning. As far as van casts go, this is a pretty short one. Van casts for me usually go between 10 and 15 minutes. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. This one's about a little bit over 5 minutes. So, was it Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon? I don't know. Sometime early in the week. But let's go, let's suit up, and enter the van. Hey, van casting, Tiger Club Radio. It is Tuesday afternoon, 4 o'clock. Oh yeah, rainy day. Tonight, I'm headed home. I'm headed home, and I'm just... in my core, I'm just furious right now with the world, and I'm trying to put myself in a good place because I'm driving, and I don't want road rage to get the best of me. I'm trying to put myself in a good place that makes me happy. And I've been watching this Gaming Palooza Empire guy, and he did another stream last night. I mentioned him on the show last week, I believe. And he did, he's been doing a lot of really great Atari 2600 content. I don't think I'm subscribed to any channels that are exclusively Atari 2600. But his stuff has been really good. He played E.T. a couple of times on a live stream, and we all tried to figure out how to play it. And I was reading from the manual, and he was trying it out, and another guy was rattling off facts, and we put it together and made it work. It was just a beautiful thing. It was like really, really playing something together. He played some Berserk. Berserk is a great game for the Atari. You know what I didn't know? He played Berserk in Game 2. Now, for the Atari, by default, the little bouncing head that comes to kill you, by default, that thing is not there. From what I understand, that's like a staple of the arcade version. This little bouncing head comes to kill you if you stay in the same place too long. I think Venture has something similar to that. He played it on Game 2, which is what you have to do if you want that little head to be involved with the game, to make it harder. But I saw him shoot the face. He shot it and made it go away. I did not know you could do that. And it was kind of a neat moment. Now I've got to look back in my high scores, but Berserk, at least in Game 1, is one of those games where at one time I had like the perfect game scenario. Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say the perfect game scenario? Any game that you're struggling with to try and do better, whatever it is, maybe it's a fighting game, maybe it's a top-down shooter, you know, whatever game you're struggling with where you want to get good. Eventually, after practice and rest and practice and training, you have this one game where all the chips fall into place. and you're playing at the top of your game and everything really works. Berserk, I had one of those games. And it's really a beautiful memory because I was using the legit Atari controller and not like the Sega controller, and it was on legit hardware and everything. It was a lot of points. I wish I could remember offhand how many it was. And I remember I was gaining lives. I was gaining extra lives faster than I was losing them. So, I think what eventually got me to stop playing was just that I had to go. I had things to do. That was when I was in college. Maybe I had homework or something. I don't know. But that only happened one time with Berserk. And it was in game 1. I gotta try it again to see if I can make that happen. There were a couple of games I did that with, but only that one game with Berserk. Another perfect game story is the one time I got 43,000 in Pitfall, which was in 2012, February 2012. And the reason I know those numbers so close is because I have it written in a spreadsheet on the computer, and I also have it written in my high score book. And we talked very much about that score during this live stream. And it was a moment where the Atari came to life in a big way for me, right? The Atari is not a system that, in my opinion, shines when you're home alone. I guess it can, but an Atari is best played with some friends, and you're competing over that score, because the high score is what was king at the time. I got to see this one Sega game for the Atari that I'd never heard of. I believe it was called Up and Down. And it goes for, I looked it up on eBay, and it goes for like $40 for a loose cart. But for an Atari game, it looked really sweet, man. You had some cars that were like at a 45-degree angle perspective, and it actually had music in the background, which was so rare on the Atari. I don't know, I thought it was really sweet. It was a lot of fun. Really got me into the whole concept of Atari. I've had this Atari bug past few nights since I started watching the Gaming Palooza Empire streams. I've wanted to get my Atari out for a while now, but I haven't made it happen. Not yet. Every year I get new Atari games from MagFest, and I haven't gotten that thing out in several years. There's got to be like 10 games I have that I haven't played by now. I don't know. That's a video worth making. That's an experience worth having. I think on Tiger Claw Radio, maybe we'll get that done sometime soon. I think the complaining about not getting out my Atari is becoming a common theme here on TCR. Oh boy! So it's a little bit early in the show to do this, but at some point I like to set aside just a minute to thank the Patreon supporters. This Patreon supported show, I mean, these guys gave their resources to make sure we can keep coming back every single week. I can't offer them a whole lot. I did one Patreon exclusive podcast, just one that came out last week. And they get the show early. They get the show as soon as it gets done, which is going to be Friday night this week. And I also read off a little list of distinguished gentlemen here on the show. And they are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, Six Health the Fury, and of course the Cartridge Brothers. Special shout out to the Cartridge Brothers. P1, who's in the Canadian Royal Navy, is shipping out. He's getting deployed. So God bless, be safe, and hopefully we'll see you have a safe return whenever that may be. I ponied up and bought the Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I got to play for about 2 hours before I went to bed. Sunday night, couldn't stay up late because I had to work. Oh man, I don't regret it at all. I don't usually do that when a game just comes out, because that just came out on Steam probably like a week ago, and I just snapped it up. So to give you a bit of my history with the Neverwinter Nights game, I used to play it online with the Gaming Beast several years back. And I've got a complete in box edition of the original game that I got from Dalamar over at Wasted Seconds. I can't remember what exactly I bought from him, I think that was when I got my Dreamcast, and he just threw it in there, just threw it in the box. It's great, and I've had it forever. But the problem with Neverwinter Nights is, for one thing, playing online was an issue. You could play online, but you had to use that program Hamachi. Do you guys remember that? If you don't know what Hamachi was, it was a tool designed for creating a VPN, right? But we would use it because if you created a VPN and you had a few people who got on that VPN, you could play certain games online using it. You could sidestep. You could sidestep the whole port forwarding issue that way, but the whole business was very sketchy. Using a VPN tool for gaming was not. It wasn't a clean install. The whole thing just felt really weird, and nobody who used Hamachi liked doing it. We would use it to play Terraria, I think, in the earliest days of Terraria's release. But when I got this new version and installed it, the first thing I did was I headed over to the multiplayer section of the game. And what did I see? Populated servers. There's a server browser. Just like when, Darabka, if you're listening out there, it's just like when we played Serious Sam these past couple nights. There's servers ready to go. You just click and you're in, and up and away. Also, workshop support. Not only for we knew there were modules that you could play, like scenarios that you could download and play, but the workshop support also seems to have like small mods, like extra portraits and different models and stuff like that. So that's been really fun. It didn't take long for me to really enjoy it. And what was the one I was playing? It comes with 2 premium scenarios. So you have like the main storyline, which has a reputation for being boring, but then it also has like a couple of premium scenarios that come with it. And I was playing one of those. So not the main story, but like one of the, I guess you'd call it DLC expansion kind of packs from back in the day that come packaged in. So yeah, that's been pretty fun. I would recommend the new Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition. It's the first Enhanced Edition of these games that I've really dug into. I can't remember if I ended up getting the Baldur's Gate one or not. I'm actually going to check right now. Yeah, I got Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. I got it in 2016, so a couple of years back. It's never been run before. I looked at Icewind Dale when that came out, but I didn't jump on it. So this is the first one I bought, installed, and played, and had a great time with. I've been in a bit of a role-playing kick lately, to be honest. This, and also Dungeon Hack, which I know I mentioned last week, but that's just a game I've locked on. Dungeon Hack is it's great. It's really good. I liked Dungeon Hack so much, I got on eBay and I looked up what it would cost to get like an old school giant big box edition. And not as much as I thought it would be. It would only be, there's one for sale now for only $20. $20, but you know, the game in it is on 3 1/4 inch floppies. Not that that matters, because I'd be playing my GOG edition anyway. But yeah, it's pretty sweet stuff. It's been sort of a computer RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, really sort of week for me lately. Ever since I started doing those Eye of the Beholder streams that I did like a couple weeks ago. Alright. Speaking of RPGs, I want to move on to something else that I saw on the internet this morning. I was watching Bithead 1000. Alright, you guys know who this is. I've mentioned him before. One of the YouTubers that I've been into quite a bit. So he got a big load of Sega Genesis games, and in the games that he had, he pulled out a copy of King's Bounty for the Sega Genesis. I didn't know King's Bounty was on the Sega. I didn't know that series went back that far. I've got King's Bounty on Steam. There's a bunch of them. Crossroads. Is it Crossroads? I can never remember if it's Crossroads or Crossworlds. An Armored Princess. I'm going to look it up now. King's Bounty, Crossworlds. I don't know why I can never say that right. But then I found out it was on the Genesis, which was great, and I was all amped up. I was like, freaking King's Bounty, man! And I've been the Sega has been like king console for me for the past, I don't know, the past couple months. And I buy games for other systems, and Sega has been the king in my house. The kids want to play Sonic the Hedgehog. That's what they want to play. So I looked up this game, and I was kind of excited at the notion of getting a King's Bounty game for the Genesis. And it's like, it's one of those games that the ship has just sailed on. $30 loose copy. $30 loose copy. This all happened this morning. I looked this up just a little while ago. Yeah, it sucks. I'm not paying $30 for it. But it's cool that it exists. Even the manual, maybe it's just an eBay thing, but the manual was being sold by itself for $10. Just to get the manual, $10. Crossworlds is a good game, though. King's Bounty was introduced to me through Crossworlds. I think that was when I first met Alex Swingle. He was like, "Yeah, King's Bounty that's what it's all about." That's like one of the first things I remember him ever telling me, was how he played like 200 hours in just one of those few installments. And yeah, that's a cool game, running around and getting involved in those like Heroes of Might and Magic style battles, but a little bit more open than Heroes of Might and Magic was. Heroes of Might and Magic to me was more of like a skirmish game rather than an adventure. So I don't know if that makes sense. More like two forces competing against each other versus one person exploring a kingdom. I don't even know if that's accurate. That's just how it strikes me. But King's Bounty is a cool game. Neverwinter Nights, though, man. Neverwinter Nights. That's a game that's got... You talk about comfy games, right? This is a thing that people talk about. Games that are comfy. It's a subject I've always enjoyed, right? Liking a game just for the game's sake. Liking the aesthetic just for the aesthetic sake. Talking about places in video games that just make you feel good inside. There's a lot of that in Neverwinter Nights. It's a game that has a vibe that's very cool. Very, very cool. Alright, boys and girls, let's play another track and then we'll go back to the band cast. This one, I think you'll all immediately recognize right here on Tiger Claw Radio. Oh boy, Friday morning. It's about 45 degrees out right now. It's pretty brisk. I can come out without a winter jacket on, which I certainly appreciate. But there's a little bit of a briskness to it. So I'm digging it. Leaving for work right now. A couple things I wanted to go over today. First and foremost, I've got a meetup this Saturday with podcasting legend Hemrock, one of the founding members of the Retro League, one of the formerly of the Retro League, among the founding members, and a very good friend of mine, a friend of the show for a very, very long time. We're gonna hang out on Saturday morning. He's gonna be in town. The only other time I've ever been able to meet up with people from YouTube or podcasting or whatever is 2013 MagFest, a story I've told many, many times on the air. Going to dinner, being invited to dinner by Vintage Video Game Geek and Games 31 and Arcade Impossible and NES Complex, and that was probably one of my favorite moments in running a YouTube channel ever, was that dinner and hanging out then. So I'm really looking forward to this. So I got out a cardboard box this morning before work, and I'm gonna bring my PS2, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna meet and we're gonna play some games, and it's going to be something very similar to the secret video game society that I described a few episodes back. It's like if all of us on Middle America and the Eastern Seaboard picked a middle spot and all drove out to that middle spot and then just had a game blowout. It's going to be kind of like that, except for one morning. So we arranged that I'm going to bring a slim PS2. I've got two controllers, which is good. They're both third-party awkward controllers, but they also work. So we're gonna do what we would always do, what I've always done in situations like this, and that's work with what we've got. So I hope that works out. So then this is what I ended up with. I ended up with a cardboard box with a PS2 in it, and I'm going through my game collection trying to find any PS1 or PS2 game that we could dig into. Now, he mentioned he's going to bring some stuff, so it's not super incumbent on me to bring the business, but I'm the system guy. He's got the game, but I don't know, I think it's folly if you're going to meet up to have just one game, unless it's like a tournament, like a Super Smash Brothers kind of game, and that's what you're going to play all day or all night or whatever. So I was like, there's space in this box left. Let's throw some multiplayer games in. So any game I had for the PS1 or PS2 that two people could play, I threw in there, even if I hadn't tried the two-player mode. Like, I threw Tiny Tank in the box. Tiny Tank's got a two-player shootout mode that I never got to try. That might be fun. I think the big heavy hitters that I'm bringing are Metal Slug. There's a Metal Slug, I think it's Metal Slug 4 and 5 for the PS2. I made sure that went in the box because I know Hemrock's a guy who would appreciate Metal Slug. I think those, and I put in Twisted Metal Black as well. Twisted Metal Black is a good game, but for some reason I had a difficult time with it. I played it back when it was fairly new. My older brother had it, and he was just beating it to death. And he and I would play two-player. Now, that's my favorite memories of Twisted Metal Black. And he had won the campaign with every character, so I remember sitting there watching all the endings, like on the live hardware for the first time. So because of that memory, I think positively of Twisted Metal Black. But every instance where I've tried to get into it myself and go through the campaign, those have all been met with disaster. So it's one of those instances where, like, this is a game that I like, but it's also a game that I'm very bad at and know very little about. If you're talking to somebody about video games and they say they're into a game, like, hey man, I really like Quake, that's a game I really like. That sentence is a sentence that also implies this is a game I know things about. So I have to, when I say that about Twisted Metal Black, I've got to say it with a huge asterisk. Hey man, this is a game I really like. Is it a game I know about? No. Is it a game I've spent a lot of time with? No. But it's a game I really like. So I threw that in there. I know that Hemrock is not much of a shooter kind of guy. and a lot of my 2-player games of that ilk are also not shooters, but 3D fighters. I mean, that's what I've been buying these past several months, right? Tekken 4, Virtual Fighter 4, or whatever number it was, DOA 2, all 2D fighters. Also I threw in Battle Arena Toshinden 2, which is a PS1 game, but I threw it in there anyway because it was a long box game and it has an awesome FMV intro, and I thought you might get a kick out of seeing it. Then Tekken 3 for the PS1, which I got for $1. That made it in the box. I threw in Gran Turismo 2, just in case you wanted to like throw down on the arcade disc. We could do some racing. I feel like I got a pretty good selection. If not, I don't have maybe the top tier kind of 2-player games for the system. I don't have Bomberman. Bomberman had a great game on the PS1. Bomberman Party Edition, right? My older brother had that with 8-person multiplayer. So 2 people, you could have your 2 people in the game with a bunch of bots. I would love to have that. For years, my older brother and I would bark at each other the Hudson logo because the Hudson game, and they had the Japanese voiceover when it would show up when you first booted up, and it would go, "Bye, Hudson." I think years after we stopped playing the game, we still would say that, "Bye, Hudson." Good stuff. My brother's got a lot of games that would be like the choice games to bring along in this situation. Another game that I would have brought if I had access to his collection, Trap Gunner. You guys know Trap Gunner? Top down, split screen, one-on-one fighting action, but rather than just taking somebody head on, you're walking around an arena trying to leave traps to kill your opponent. That's a good game, man. I got to play it a few months back over at NG's house. NG had Trap Gunner set up on his Raspberry Pi, and it ran just so smooth, so playable. Couldn't believe it. But that's a $40 game, so I certainly don't own it. So that's my Saturday morning meetup. I'll report back on how that went. I think by the time this podcast goes up, it'll have already come and gone, but I'm going to have to do the recording, I think, tonight. So, I don't know, next week I guess we'll talk about that. Alright, and then there was a story last night, apart from the YouTube meetup thing. The second point I wanted to go over this morning. A Fortnite story. This is me pretty much checking out a Fortnite. So, Fortnite is like a really popular game. You guys have probably all seen the memes out there. Not at all retro game. It's one of these games where it's like, I played it some, but I feel like when I talk about it on the air, I would lose everyone. You guys, like when I talk about H1Z1, it's like nobody was playing that who would listen to this show. But I've been playing it, right? And I got a friend who plays it on Xbox One. We do cross-play sometimes, which is pretty cool that they have that kind of thing. So a little while ago, they added these rocket launchers, bazookas, with heat-seeking missiles. And my friend and I had one night where we were doing duos. We were on a team, and we did very well. We were one of the last standing teams. And we were hiding out inside of a house, hoping that the other remaining people would kill each other, right? That's the strategy. You get down to the last few people. If you're still alive, one thing to do is you can find a squat, let the numbers thin out a little bit, and then you pounce. Hang on. So that's what we did. So here we were sitting in this house, and I got my friend on Discord, and he's like, "Don't make a sound." We got both our guns trained on the stairwell. We're like on the top floor of a house. We're being real quiet, and the tension's really high. And does somebody come running up the stairs? No. The wall that's right next to us gets blown off by a rocket, and we both die. That was my first instance where I was like, maybe this rocket launcher thing threw the balance too off of this game. Fast forward to last night. So my friend and I are, my same friend, we're getting ready to play Fortnite. I got the kids to bed early, so it's like 7 o'clock, and I'm up at my computer, and I know my friend's not going to be around for like an hour. So I said, all right, I'm going to do some singles. I'm going to play myself so that I can get warmed up, because my friend's way better at this game than me. So while I'm playing, I got a few, there's usually several games right up front where it's like I die right away and I can't get any traction. That's normal, especially in a game like this. H1Z1, that happened a lot as well. So I hang in there with those games, and then the good game finally comes. Alright? I find a great big chain gun, like a minigun. Fortnite players will know, but it's big minigun. And I killed a couple of people. I remember catching one guy in particular who was hiding out in a place I thought was empty, and I think he was hoping that I would just move on. I like turned a corner, and there was the guy, like a foot away from where I was, and I just cut him down with a chain gun, and that was it. He was done. So the match starts to progress, and I employ hideout tactics. All right. I find a nice spot towards the middle of the safe zone. I find a closet, walk inside, close the door, hunker down, and then I watch the total number of surviving players start to drop as the other players kill each other. So there I go. I'm hiding out. It gets down to about 7 people. All right. And then the announcement is made that the circle is going to close in, which it always does. And the hiding spot that I'm in is outside the circle now. So it's like, all right, I've got 60 seconds to move from my spot to come out and run to the center of the circle. But I knew better than to just leave and start running in the second that announcement was made. So what I did was, all right, I got 60 seconds to run there. It'll probably take me about 15 seconds to run to safety. So I'm going to sit here 30 seconds and burn up 30 seconds and hope that other people run out first. So that's what I did, and it worked. The numbers of the match went from 7 remaining players down to 3. So there's me, one of 3 people left. Okay? So me and 2 other guys. And I had just picked up some ammo while I was running, so I'm standing there with my chain gun. Which, if you've never played Fortnite, chain gun, 1 weapon, right? And you get 5 slots. So I have 1 slot with a med kit, and then a few other weapons. And then there's this guy who is like trying to get to high ground that I see. And he's doing it by building a tower around himself. So one of my other weapons was like a scoped assault rifle. So I zoom in on this guy and I start popping off rounds. I'm gonna get you, man. And he's building him up. He's building the wall up faster than I can shoot him down. It's like, all right. So then I switch to the chain gun. The minigun barrel starts turning, and I'm just blasting this tower with ammo. And he can't build it up, because as fast as he can build up the tower, I'm knocking it down. Then the chain gun runs out of ammo. So I switch to the scoped assault rifle, and I zoom in. I'm like, all right, you built your tower, guy. Eventually you're going to have to peek out. And when you do, I'm going to kill you. Because I got a scoped assault rifle and I can see exactly where you are. So I can either try and shoot through this wall or wait for you to peek. And so my days of Counter-Strike are like, wait for the peek. Just wait for the peek, because he's got to peek. He's behind covers. No way he can get me out there unless he throws a grenade and hopes he gets lucky, which isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's far enough away that I'll see it coming. He'll never get me. So here's what happens. He's ducked down in this tower. I can't get him. He shoots a rocket straight up into the sky, like he's trying to get it into outer space. Shoots this rocket straight up into the sky. And then I see the rocket curve towards me, and I'm like, oh, crap. I know what's coming next. So here comes this rocket start to chase me. I've never been able to get away from these. And that was it. That's how he got me. By shooting a rocket straight up into the air and then using the remote control feature to just come and kill me. And I just felt like, what a disastrous weapon. It reminded me of the Counter-Strike days when they added that revolver. If you were playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive back in 2014, when they first added the R8 revolver, it was as powerful and as deadly as the AWP for $800. They nerfed it pretty hard since then. It's still kind of imbalanced, if you ask me, but it was like that. This was truly the introduction of a weapon that ruined a game for me. Now, mind you, it's about 7:30 at this time. My friends must be on in a half an hour. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so mad. So it's like, all right, 30 minutes left till my friend gets on. I need to take a break from this game because I'm really upset now. We're talking high sodium intake there, friends. So I get off the computer, I sit down on the couch, and then I fall asleep on the couch. I never ended up playing with my friend because I fell asleep. Phone rang, and I looked down, and there's a text message from him. Well, I guess you're out, bro. So I'll see you next time. Oh my gosh, I felt so bad. I'll probably end up playing Fortnite again at some point, but that's the last time I try and do warm-up rounds before my friend gets on. I'll tell you that much. All right, boys and girls. We got the big meetup coming. We got our Fortnite story. I think that's a Vancast for the day. What do you think? I'll see you guys back at the Comfortable Panzer Studios. It's Friday morning. Good day to be excited, but I still got to go do my shift at work. And I got to work it like it's Monday. You know what I'm saying? I got to get it done, Holmes. All right, see you guys there. Oh, almost forgot. The way I like to finish Vancasts now, if I remember, is what would I be playing if I was back at my place? The last little bit here, when I remember to do this, because I think I forgot the last couple times. For me, it would be Army Men 3D on the PlayStation 1. That's what I would be playing right now. And the reason why is because I spent time digging through my collection this morning, and it was one of those moments where if you're digging through a part of your collection you haven't been to in a while, and you pull out games you haven't thought about in a while, and it's like, oh, hey, this would be fun to play. That was me this morning with Army Men 3D. Because I got a bunch of the Army Men games like three weeks ago or so on Steam, and I had a lot of fun with them. But Army Men 3D was not among them. As far as I know, you can't get that game on the computer. At least not from Digital Distro. Probably a PlayStation exclusive, although I don't know. I'd have to do some research and find out. Army Men was never a series that I knew a lot about. It was just a series I knew was there. You know what I'm saying? Well, all right.
And we're back. We are back in the Comfortable Studios. Should we do another one? It's been so long. We're 39 minutes in. You guys have been battered. You've been through the ringer, and you've been in the van. But I'll tell you what, let's just hang in there just a little bit longer. I got some awesome stuff to go over with you guys. Let's go back to the van one more time for the week on Tiger Club Radio.
Here I come, baby. Coming to get you. Friday afternoon, man. I feel like I don't do a whole lot of van casting on Friday afternoon. The weather's good. Gotta say. Good day to be out and about. I'm going to the gym tonight, which I am trying to pretend that I'm looking forward to. But I've been using the gymnasium, the good old Gime, as it were. And here's hoping that works out. It's been making me feel better. Not much of a muscle-bound kind of guy, but hit the treadmill a little bit, do a little this, do a little that. It helps me feel a lot better. It really does. So that's good. The video game front, I've had my eye on all kinds of things lately. Jeez Louise. There was a period of time several months back when I first started like doing the unboxing stuff and getting back into physical games, where I put like a ton of lowball bids out on all kinds of different stuff on eBay. And I was like, look, I just want to get some new games coming in. Time to get some new games coming in. And I did that for a while. And that kind of slowed down. And then it slowed down in the middle of like a list. I had a get list that I featured on my channel. And I didn't get the last thing. The last item was Soul Calibur 3 for the PS2, which I never picked up. And the reason why I did lists like that was to bring some continuity to the, to the acquisitions, and make it, try to compel people to, keep coming back and watching the next one. So last couple days, I was like, I want to do that again. Now, I didn't put out any orders for Soul Calibur 3, but I bid on a lot of stuff. I want to get the core design Tomb Raider games on the PS2. Those are really cheap because they're everywhere. Tomb Raider Legends and Anniversary and all that stuff. Those are on lots and lots of different systems. So I'm going to see if I can get those for a couple of dollars a piece. I've ordered a new Atari game, although I can't remember what it is now because I just ordered it yesterday, and I don't know. I ordered a new Atari game, and I've been watching a lot of Gaming Palooza Empire, a lot of Atari, really good Atari videos. He mentioned me in his Pitfall video, which is cool. But I watched a video from him today where it was, I want to say Freeway, but that wasn't it. It was an Activision game for the Atari 2600 with a racing theme, but it wasn't Freeway. Freeway was with the chickens and crossing the street and whatnot. I wish I could remember what it was called. I'll have to go back and look. But yeah, watching Gaming Palooza has got me to want to order more Atari stuff because Atari is awesome. But if I'm going to get back into Atari, it's not games that I need. What I need for the Atari is a paddle controller. I've had that system for many years. I bought it when I was probably 19 years old, and I'm 33 now. 34? Wow. 34 years old. So I've had that thing for quite a bit, and I've never owned a paddle controller. And come to think of it, I've only actually used a paddle controller maybe twice. Once for sure, and that was at MagFest playing Warlords on 4-player. Now here's the thing. I've never owned a paddle controller for the Atari, but I've always owned paddle controller games. When I got my Atari, I got it from a used CD exchange kind of place. It was music oriented, but it was also, they had a pawn license, so they were essentially like a pawn shop. Get mad, sucker. Get mad. Alright, what was I saying? Yeah, so we're turning back the clock so I can tell about the origins of my getting the Atari. I used to work at a restaurant, and I would have a lot of $1 bills. This is when I was single. Didn't have any kids. I was 18 and 19 years old at the time. I worked there for a couple of years. So I would leave with a bunch of $1 bills in my pocket. Good bit of $1 bills. We're talking about, 50, 60, sometimes even like $100 in ones, depending on how busy the restaurant was on that particular day. Hang on, do I have the heat on? Give me 1 second. There we go. So across the street was this CD and gameplay. That wasn't really a game store, but they had a couple. It was CDs and records and tapes and stuff. And I would buy CDs there. I bought a lot of like punk albums and whatnot. It was great. They had a lot of good stuff. I wish that place was still around. They've been gone many, many years. And then at some point, I used to go there and buy like something little, and then I would like trade in my ones. Because most businesses, like, they run out of ones from giving change. I would go in there and basically do the reverse thing and be like, hey, now that you got the drawer open, I got like $40 in ones. Can I get some regular bills? And I'd be like, yeah, okay, man. Because I didn't have a car, so it was difficult for me to like make a side trip to the bank to take care of that sort of thing. So I knew this CD place very well. The guy who ran the register was in a band that I liked, like a local punk band that was really good called Brent's Life Sucks, and they were good. They did a good show, man. I was a big fan of them. And that's where I bought this Atari. It turned up one day for $40, and I got it in a garbage bag, and it was running, let's see, it had the old RF switch box that came with the Atari back in the day. So when I first bought it and plugged it in, it was very fuzzy. This was not like a clean, crisp Atari picture. This was like a 1980s, very fuzzy Atari picture. And that was my introduction to Atari. I can't remember all the games I got, but I remember the first one that I played was the original Pac-Man. You know, Pac-Man, which is touted as one of the worst Atari games, next to E.T., which everybody likes to take a big crap on. But Pac-Man was another one that was very, very bad for sure. And I put it in when I got everything home, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. This is what Atari is? I wasn't sold at first, guys, to be honest with you. And it wasn't until later on, till I got the. Oh, by the way, I didn't have the internet at that time. I just didn't have the internet. It wasn't something I had. I had a laptop that I bought used, but I didn't have enough money for a dial-up service, so that just wasn't an option. So I had Pac-Man, and I wish I could remember all the games I got, but I got Warlords as well, and a game called Phoenix, which I remember Phoenix being the game to play of all the games that I got out of the gate. Phoenix was good. Missile Command was also really good. And I think that was it. Missile Command and Phoenix, and then Space Invaders also were the good games I had. I got good games later, but those were the playable games that I got out of the gate. And it wasn't until later on when I got the internet that I watched a video from Classic Game Room explaining how an Atari can be hooked up. I just ripped out that RF box, this weird like input-output box from the 80s, and I replaced it with a little converter and basically just used an RGB composite cable, but only one of the three. It was very weird. Atari's a weird system. And that gave me the clear, crisp Atari picture of like what you'd expect these days. So that was great. So I've had that for a long time. And the funny thing about Atari is I've always consistently got games for it. I haven't always consistently played it, but even when I was like not really into collecting, I'd still, once a year or so, I'd come across some Atari game, mostly at MagFest, but in other ways as well. So I've got a pretty sizable Atari collection, I would say. There was some reason why I wanted to tell that story. I can't remember what it was. I think it had to do with that particular CD place and some of the gaming hardware that I got there. Because the Atari wasn't the only thing I bought there. I bought my original Nintendo there as well. And I remember the day I bought it, I walked in and I asked, hey, you guys got... I saw the Nintendo there, that's what it was. They had it like under the glass case. And I bought it, and then like minutes after I bought it, somebody came in asking if they had an original Nintendo. And they were like, nah, we just sold it. So that was cool. I got a lot of good PlayStation games there. PlayStation games. This was before I ended up selling a bunch of my PlayStation 1 collection for grocery money. Among the games that I picked up was Tobal number 1 with the Final Fantasy VII demo, which is, that's a classic. Alright, let's see here. Driving. Doing a little bit of driving, hang on. So, yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that, but Atari games are awesome. That place was awesome. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I have a new Atari game coming. I also bought Ninja Gaiden for the original Xbox. Second Breakfast, one of the Cartridge Club shows, has a really good channel called Second Breakfast, guys. And he's been showing off some collections lately. He's getting ready for a move, so I guess while he's breaking down his game room, he's like, all right, we'll do the one at a time. We'll put out collection videos. So he did an original Xbox collection video, and he raised a good point. The Xbox One is adding backwards compatibility slowly to a large number of games, or a number of games. I don't know how many. And he was like, because of this, you can expect the prices of the original Xbox games to go way up. So the second I saw that, I headed over to eBay and say, all right, what can I still get for cheap? So I ordered the original, or not the original, because that's an NES game, but I ordered Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox. Thankfully, got it for under $5, which is great. And there you go. That should show up in like a week or so. And then I'm a happy camper. That, an Atari game. What did I order from? I ordered a couple things from AliExpress last week. But I can't remember what they were. I think it was a couple of Sonic the Hedgehog games, because those have been played in my house a lot. I did a recording with Sendu for the Monster Cast, and we talked all about Sonic the Hedgehog. And I ended up ordering a couple of ROM hacks on Sendu's recommendation. And that was good times. So you know how AliExpress is. Since I ordered them last week, I can expect them to be here in a couple of months. Alright. The material that I have for this week's TCR is already really long, so I don't know where this is going to make it. I might use it in the supporter-only version of the show in order to keep TCR from running very long. But I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I guess I just wanted to talk about video games on a Friday afternoon, because I've got to go to the gym. I can't sit down in my office and play games this evening, which really bothers me. I don't know. I'm having a hard time with the whole time management portion of using a gym. I'm hoping that I get used to it, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, that's all I got for now. I'll see you guys.
Back in the studio where it's nice and comfortable. Friday night, feeling good, getting the podcast wrapped up. We're 53 minutes in. This is going to be a deluxe episode for you guys, because I've got something else special for you. Last week, when I wrapped up recording, I had one more bit that I wanted to do. There's a little something that I found on Atari Age that I went over, and it took about 25 minutes, and we got some really good stuff. This is a really good one. So hang with me. We're gonna go over this real quick, and then we got the fail bag on this deluxe episode of Tiger Claw Radio. All right, you guys ready for this one? I watched a stream last night. The channel on YouTube is called Gaming Palooza Empire. This was a channel I watched back in 2009 or so. They did a few MS-DOS videos. It was a group of people, I believe. And then at some point, they got hacked and all of their videos got deleted. And it was one of those deals where if you went to the channel, everything was gone except for one video. And the one video was the owner of the channel going, "Oh, what happened to all my videos?" And he said, "Yeah, that's it. We're not going to survive this." And that's the end. So I believe I unsubscribed to them at some point. Either I was unsubscribed, either I unsubscribed myself, or it just happened when people were complaining about unsubscribing and stuff. As it turns out, they've been around ever since then, and I just kind of recently discovered them. So now I think it's just one guy, and he's doing like old Atari 2600 videos. And a lot of them really fast. They're not scripted. He tends to stay on one concept for a while and repeat himself sometimes, but that's all right. It's a very gritty feel, a gritty textured early YouTube feel that I really like. It's like when an early YouTuber gets his hands on a good camera. This is Gaming Palooza Empire is what comes out. So the guy
did a stream on YouTube last night, and it was clearly a test stream. Let's play some Atari 2600 games and just talk about it. There were only a few people watching, like 2 or 3. And at first he was playing E.T., and he was trying to figure out how it works, and I told him what I knew through the chat, and we were like talking back and forth. And then the patches that you would get from Activision came up. Activision used to have these in the instruction manuals. If you got over a certain amount of points, you would take a picture of your TV on like a Polaroid camera. You'd send it in, and they would give you like a club member patch. Well, my Atari claim to fame is that I got a score that was high enough in Pitfall to pass that threshold, which, like, to a hardcore Atari player is very doable, but there aren't many of them left, I don't think, unless you go to Atari Age or something. So we got talking back and forth about this score, and I had it written down in a spreadsheet of video game like achievements and records and stuff that I want to hold on to. This is back in 2012. I got this score. And he said something about the Atari Age forums. He was like, you should go to Atari Age and talk about it. The forums there are locked down for some reason. Like, he couldn't go to the Atari Age forums and post. So I says, all right. So I went over to Atari Age. Turns out I had an account there that I registered back in 2010 that I forgot about. That's 8 years ago, an 8-year-old account. I went through the steps of recovering the account, and I got in, and I went to look, let's see if I have any active posts from 8 years ago. So get this. This is the reason why I'm telling you this story. What I found there was a post about podcasts. Hey, video game podcasts, and I made some posts in it. Some guy was like, hey, here's 2 video game podcasts that I like to listen to. One I'd never heard of, and the other was a program called the Retro League, which I've talked about here for many, many years. The Retro League started at like almost exactly the same time as TCR back in 2009, and they're still around, and so are we. And this thread continued from then all the way up until now. It's still active today. Like, the last post in it was like from a week ago. It's people just talking about podcasts they like and what they were listening to and what was out there and what was good and what wasn't good. And if you go back to that first page and you read like the first 5, 6, 7 pages, my show, Jerry Terrifying's Mondo Coolcast, and the Retro League and Classic Elite, and a lot of the shows that I knew, we all got talked about. And it was mostly in a negative light. Like, I remember this. I want to go there and read some of this stuff on the air, but there's a lot of people that I really like being like talked bad about. One in particular was Mondo Coolcast. There were some negative comments about Retro Kaiser's interactions on Mondo Coolcast. It's really funny stuff. Hang on, give me a second. Let me see if I can dig up the link. All right, here we go. Here's the original post. Posted November 10th, 2009. I finally stumbled on 2 video game classic, of course, podcasts that doesn't feel like 2 ice packs shoved into my eardrums. Number 1, the Retro League. They have a podcast. It's typically NES on up, but it's worth listening to. Racket Boy. This is also worth listening to. They interviewed Eugene Jarvis. Can't get more classic, i.e. before the NES, than that. They switched co-hosts on Retrocore. Colin, the one who sounds like a fast food drive-thru order taker, has been replaced by a female co-host. She has a better sound quality and doesn't suck up to Chris, which is all Colin did. Perhaps upgrade this from worst podcast ever to don't listen. Retro Force Go is supposedly discontinued. No more bah-ha-ha-ha-ha from Jeremy. So I don't know a lot of what he's talking about. I never listened to Racket Boy. I never listened to Retro Force Go. I don't know who this Colin guy is, but I sure know the Retro League, and I thought that was cool. So let me see. Let me see if I can fast forward a little bit to where some other people I know were talked about. This isn't about me, but one guy says, considering how active... no. Let me back up a sec. I would love to hear a straight-up Atari podcast about the 2600 and things related to that. Considering how active the Atari homebrew scene is, it seems like an Atari-centric podcast would have plenty to talk about. Between talking about old games and talking about new games, it would be cool if some folks around here got together and did an official Atari Age podcast. Chris. That was posted in 2010. I'm sure there's been an official Atari Age podcast since then. Here's a guy who writes his list. Enjoying old games. Glad to hear that they got called out on their Jaguar hatred within one episode. Here's what I'm listening to regularly now: Drunken Gamers Radio, Retronauts, Mobcast, Radio Free Nintendo, Old Games Plus, Game Blips, and the Retro League, and that was edited back in April 2010. So that's how long the Retro League's been around. A long, long time, and they've been more solid than I have. So here's the first time I'm mentioned. Some quickie reviews. This guy's got like a bullet point list of some podcasts and some reviews, and my name shows up, but with no review, and it's under a list entitled MIA. This is from 2010. I'm on the list of podcasts he would listen to, but I was MIA at the time. Probably because my son was born in 2009, and if these are like May 2010, that means he must have been like, let's see. I can do the math. I know he's only 1, but like I'm trying to remember what it was like when he was 1. And I remember my son in a pack and play when he was a little baby, and then sitting a laptop in front of the pack and play and doing the podcast, and then looking my son in the eye as I did the podcast, so that he would feel like, hey, it's all right, Dad's here, Dad's talking to you. And that's how I would get it done, because he was so little. I mean, he just to hear Dad's voice and stuff, and that way I could engage him, but then still get that done. I remember doing that a couple times. Triverse writes, Tiger Claw Radio just released an episode. The host is in the middle of finals at college, so it's going to be a little slower on releasing episodes right now. I forgot about dealing with finals in college. That's something I'm glad I never have to deal with again. At least until, I get certs and stuff, or go back for my master's or that sort of stuff. But I'm glad the general vibe of finals is behind me. Here's one guy who writes, okay, I listened to Classic Elite podcast. Audio's a bit hollow but passable. I ditch all the modern gaming talk and stick to the classic stuff. There's already more than enough modern gaming podcasts and modern gaming websites. I'd also last longer than 30 minutes. RJ, you're right. C-. Still waiting on Atari Joe and his Super Gang podcast. Classic Elite and I have had a rocky relationship, but I gotta say they've come a long way since their 2010 days. I think a lot of this is just all of our early days and early figuring out how podcasts work. And look, in 2010, podcasting was around, but if you were outside of the Apple sphere, the iTunes sphere, there wasn't a lot of it. You really had to dig. I mean, that's why this thread exists. You had to dig to find people who are worth listening to find people who are worth emulating. Nobody had the money to gather equipment to do real quality stuff, and nobody had the time to do it consistently. So there were a lot of like little kids, like young guys, just putting together what they could and just getting it out there, and they were getting listens. Right now it's a different world. There you go. Mondo Cool is decent, plus a catchy electronica tune at the end. We'll download more. And I got the idea. Mr. Terrifying thinks Sega CD's Wing Commander is top-notch and amazing. I remember that. I remember Jerry Terrifying talking about Wing Commander on the Sega CD. I don't know why he picked the Sega CD. I don't know. But like Wing Commander came out. Wing Commander was like, looking back, one of the most enduring games of that era within my collection. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Maybe that's not fair, but Wing Commander is an amazing game. And that's definitely unique to lock onto a console port. I would love to play the Sega CD version at some point. I remember Jerry talking about how at that time, the Sega CD version, the control scheme was like, you couldn't find it online. So you had to have a real version of the game with a real instruction manual. Because Wing Commander had a lot of small controls. You had to be able to lock on, you had to be able to send communications and talk to people, you had to be able to use missiles, you had to be able to switch which guns you were using. The flying controls were complicated because you had to be able to roll and like strafe and go up and down. There was a lot of like little button combinations so that you could do additional inputs, so you had to have a manual. I have it on the Super Nintendo. It's like that on the Super Nintendo as well. It's a little awkward to play, to say the least. I want to get into the posts where they like start talking crap about us. That's what I found, I think, was the most funny. And who should show up in the thread? I didn't notice this before. Who should show up in the thread but freaking Jerry Terrifying himself? Let's see what he's got to say. No, I'm a real life champion. I run marathons and want to train. Wait. Come on, talk about your podcast. Okay, I do not want to be the king of YouTube and podcasting. That's Jerry Terrifying in 2010. I wonder if that's still. I wonder if that's still the way he feels about it. All right, come on. Where are they talking crap about us? Here's one. Thanks for all the ideas on podcasts, guys. I just listened to Wasted Seconds, and I'll pass. Too much drivel. Ouch. Now, that's kind of easy for me to read now because I haven't talked to Dalamar in like 5+ years. But ouch. Okay, here's my reply. Wow, I know a lot of the guys discussed here. Great topic. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the guy from Tiger Claw TV and Tiger Claw Radio. I also made the little chiptune Scott and Tony play at the beginning of Classic Elite. That's right. Classic Elite used to use a tune that I made in Famitracker. Let's see. Hey, Crit, when will you be available on iTunes? Searching Tiger Claw Radio doesn't yield any results. That's because I was using Podbean at the time. iTunes was always a mess. I was never good at iTunes. To this day, I'm pretty sure that we're available as part of Podomatic, which is one of the reasons why I still maintain Podomatic, even though it's not used very much. But yeah, what are you gonna do? Also, one of the reasons why I love this topic is because they talk about the early days of All Gen Gamers, when All Gen Gamers first came around. And all of the discussion about All Gen Gamers is all extremely negative. They hated it. I remember when All Gen Gamers came out, talking about it with my friends and fellow podcasters, and we couldn't make sense of it. We were like, this is not going to appeal to guys like us. This is going to be like a young man's podcast. And they were very successful at doing that. But this is the first time I've ever really heard anybody out in the open just ripping into those guys, which is pretty unexpected. Here we go. How do I get Tiger Claw radio shows from iTunes again? You explained the procedure once before. IRC and it was easy. But it doesn't want to seem to update new ones anymore. Meanwhile, just get it from a site and convert it to work for DSI. I always got my Tiger Claw episodes from iTunes, both of them. But when I go to his website, and apparently he's on episode 52 or something, I honestly didn't know how many episodes he had. We should make a grid of who has co-hosted on each other's podcasts. Jerry Terrifying, Critical Failure, the Retro League. I think everyone now has co-hosted on each other's podcasts, and that's true. Back in those days, we all worked together a lot, and it was really like a golden age to run a podcast. We didn't have that's the thing. Now we see like you see sites like the Cartridge Brothers, and God bless the Cartridge Brothers. They're doing it. What the Cartridge Brothers are doing now is the closest to what we had in those days back in 2010. But in 2010, we had something like the Cartridge Brothers, but there was no actual site. We just all knew each other. We kept in touch. You know, when G&DB put up an episode, all the other shows listened to it, so we all knew, right? And we would just like, one guy would be here and one guy would be there, and it was when you tuned into a podcast like Mondo Coolcast, the people who showed up on it, like, was the same like 4 or 5 people that all ran different shows, and it was interchangeable, and it was great. That was, I think, what I miss the most about running a podcast is the way things were back then. All right, here's one guy. I believe this guy's ripping into All Gen Gamers. Let's read. Want a fun challenge? Try to find the email address for All Gen Gamers. It's not listed anywhere on the website I could find. Try leaving a comment on an episode. It's shut off. I wanted to send them a nice email on the gradual decline of their show. It's 75% YouTube fame and annoying morning zoo whale sounds. No, I don't want to connect on Facebook. No, I don't want to sign up for an account on your forums. No, I don't want to follow you on Twitter. No, I don't want to subscribe on iTunes. I refuse to get an iTunes account due to the credit card. No, I don't want to click another circular link back to the homepage. Great jorb, guys. Classic video game podcasts have died down a bit recently. Hey, listen, you want to email me? It's tigerclawradio@yahoo.com. All right? I'm wide open, pal. That is brutal. And those guys, that's all Gen Gamers he's talking about. You like it or not, say what you will about those guys. They were the kings. All right? When they put out a show, hundreds of people listened to it day one. They I think got a lot of people listening to podcasts that wouldn't have otherwise. Love them or hate them, because I know a lot of us, when they came out, they were like, we've been grinding at this thing for years, and they're just gonna walk out, put out episode 1, and they're gonna have a huge following. It was tough. It was tough as a small show, to swallow that reality. But they really did bring in a lot of listeners. A lot of people listening to podcasts. I hope are still listening to podcasts that weren't previously. People who just wanted to check out what Pete Dorr was doing. Mr. Excitement, as I like to call him. Pete Dorr. That guy cracks me up.
Hey guys, I'm very excited. I cannot contain my excitement right now for this video game. It's so exciting that I have
Mr. Excitement. As far as I'm concerned, Gamester 81 was the life's blood of that show. That's all Gen Gamers for me lived and died with Gamester 81. I love that guy. He was the redeeming factor of all Gen Gamers. And the reason why I was never willing to just come out and say, you know what? Boo on them. Because I never wanted to throw Gamester under the bus or be negative about any project he was involved in. Here's some well-wishing for one of my boys. Most of the time, the guys here, they don't like swearing and that sort of thing. This guy writes, yes, I'm tolerant and accepting of vulgarity and swearing and such. Jerry Terrifying's podcast has no such limits and sometimes delves into it, but I love listening to it. It's seedy, it's raw, it's a welcome change from family-friendly podcasting where hell is considered a bad word. He does it right without the boring audience. I would say that's fair. I would say that's a fair statement. It's certainly it's certainly a raw experience. I don't know. I've stayed on this topic for a while. There was one where this guy said something about me being a 14-year-old kid or something like that, which is not true. I Russell my jimmies. But yeah, there was a little bit of trash talking about TCR in its early days, which, to be honest, I mean, the early days of TCR was pretty rough. I mean, like, it's rough now, but it was way rough then. At least now I've got like a decent mic and a soundboard and a couple of things up my sleeve. In those days, it was just like, I downloaded this game. Downloaded a game. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's some trash. It's all from the same guy. I don't want to say his name, but he writes, Retro Kaiser is really bringing down the Mondo Coldcast. He's incredibly childish and doesn't mesh well with the other hosts. Screaming and yelling into the microphone isn't good for any podcast. Sorry, Kais. It's funny because Kaiser has kept the Mondo Coolcast website alive single-handedly through a giant downtime. But hey, man, we're getting. I've never knew that we were listened to enough to merit getting negative reviews. So that's. Don't feel bad. It's a new level of listenership that, frankly, I'm not too familiar with. Here's somebody ripping on Classic Late. This is from, now mind you, this is from 2011, and to put it into context, at that time, there was a podcast called Gooch and the Douchebag Radio. Nobody seems to know who they were anymore, but that was a podcast that consisted of two guys, One who actually worked in radio at one point, and the other was, I don't know, just a guy. Two friends, childhood friends. They were funny. They were funny guys. And a lot of the people I know, I met through them. That's how I met Jerry Terrifying. We were both guests on G&DB back in the day. And like guys like Sendu, I met them through the G&DB community. They were an interesting they were an interesting kind of case study because I was a big fan of them, and then I got on their show as a fan, and then I kind of became friends with them a little bit during this age, and then they fused with Classic Elite, and a lot of us didn't like that move because we felt like our old favorite show was going away. So this is what this guy has to say. Classic Elite, still getting disagreements for merging with G&DB, did an episode over IRC with a guy who was involved with Madden 2012. I could not think of anything I would want to listen to any less. Skipped that one. Oh dear. Burn! What a burn. What a burn for a show that like went out of their way to really get people that were worth talking to. Like, I remember classically talking to Disaster Piece, right? And like the guy from Super Meat Boy. Do you remember that movie, Indie Game, the movie? When they first introduced Edmund, whatever his name is, the Super Meat Boy guy, they play like a montage of podcasts talking about him. And you can hear Scott from Classic Elite for like a half second in his interview. So I don't know. I'm delving really deep now into the well, kind of dating myself, but what are you gonna do? So here's what I'm gonna say. There is, to sum up the last 20 minutes of podcasting, there is a topic on Atari Age that is many pages long that talks about a lot of our old friends. Okay, so that's the whole story. A lot of it is negative. But it's nice to know that in those days, even if, some of this stuff was negative, we were being listened to, We didn't have clear statistics, right? In those days, you couldn't upload your podcast to YouTube. So we would use these services like Podbean and Podomatic and stuff like that. And you would have, you would just kind of have to guess, Podomatic had numbers in those days, but they didn't add up. You'd have it would say 4 people listened, but then you'd get comments from 5 or 6 different people. So, all right. I feel like I should play another track before I go into the fail bag, but we're an hour and 18 minutes in, and I haven't read comment 1, so I want to make sure this gets done. All right, boys and girls, it's time for the fail bag. This is the part of the show where we really take advantage of being a small community. Anything that you want to say to me, any questions, comments, anything like that, you can head over to youtube.com, leave a comment anywhere where you can get the podcast. Also, thenextround.net. That's another great place to get in touch with me. So, as things go, I've expanded to include comments on other videos around my YouTube channel because this is really about my whole sphere, right? Anywhere where you're getting me. If you're leaving a comment on any of my other YouTube videos, you're getting me. So it's liable to be read. So let's start with an email that came in, I believe, just today from my good pal Hemrock, who I'm going to go see tomorrow morning. And he writes, CF, great podcasting, my friend. I have some questions for you. You said in the last episode that Nintendo leads the industry in abandoning old hardware. Do you think we would have seen the retro video game revolution if the NES and SNES had been solely digital games that were abandoned in the late 90s? Would the virtual console have been as successful? In a related question, will we still be able to play our Wii Virtual Console games after January 2019? You mentioned 50-cent Xbox games. That sounds like a great deal. I think the original Xbox is an incredibly underrated system. The Xbox and PS1 are probably 2 of the best systems if you're looking to get your biggest bang for the buck. Any thoughts on this? Well, the Atari box looks like it's shaping up to be a complete failure. Didn't Atari officially release many of their games as ROMs on an Atari Age? I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
How is this any different from the ill-fated Ouya? May you rest in peace. With a few extra Atari games that we've seen on compilations since the Super Nintendo. Still on Windows 7, huh? Is that your favorite version of Windows? And why? I think I would say Windows XP. I still haven't dedicated... Hang on. Excuse me. I still have a dedicated Windows XP machine. Do you use Linux anymore these days? Sendu wrote in about Archon. You should really check this game out, especially since you like chess. Sendu also spoke to the superiority of Android over iPhones. I agree. I switched to an Android phone years ago, and I still love Android. Speaking of Sendu, should we expect his appearance on the next Monstercast? Quick break from the email. Yes, you should. I recorded an hour with Sendu. It was great. It's the first time I talked to him on Skype in 3 years. It was a good hour. We got some really good material. Back to the email. Now to reference items you mentioned in the Patreon podcast. You spoke about ways to reward patrons. I think having a quarterly or even biannual Patreon exclusive podcast would be cool. Some place where you can speak your mind about new ideas and brainstorm out loud. Additionally, you could release old videos or podcasts that got lost in time and never made their way to the internet and could simply make those exclusive to patrons. You mentioned how the legendary... Hold on, let me back up a little bit. You mentioned the now legendary Suikoden video and how your old video editing software crashed on you. If you still have the original save file and footage, you should be able to salvage it. Is there any hope in this idea? Do they still sell the software you used previously? If you're looking for a good free video editing program, try KDN Live. There is a stable version that works on Linux and a beta version for Windows. I've created a few videos using this software and I'm rather impressed. Thank you for the podcast. I'm rooting for you. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Hemrock, my man. Got some good stuff in this email. Let's start at the end and work backwards. KDN Live. I absolutely use that on Linux Mint. I do all my gaming on Windows, and most of what I do on this computer is gaming. Now on Linux, I tried recording TCR, but the Audacity, at least the Audacity that I was using about at that time, was pretty unstable, and it crashed quite a lot. And especially on a night like this, where I'm an hour and 22 minutes in, a crash at this point could absolutely bring this show to its knees. And on that note, let me save real quick and make sure that doesn't happen. So now I do my gaming on Windows, and I also have to do TCR on Windows. Linux I use for video editing on occasion, because the video editing, the KDN Live, is just so much more powerful than Windows Media Maker. I have to get off of Windows Movie Maker. Even simple things, it doesn't do enough of what I wanted it to do. Sony Vegas is actually on sale on Steam, of all things. It's $30 right now, so I'm considering picking up Sony Vegas. But yeah, KDN Live is a really good program. I like Linux. I do. It needs... I kind of want to get out of... I'm thinking of getting away from Linux Mint. Although I haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet. I just need... And here's the thing. Linux Mint is doing everything I need it to do. It's just that it's not enticing me anymore. Linux was one of those things that I stuck with longer than I needed to, not because of the things it could or couldn't do, but because it was so elegant. It was such a new and sleek and comfortable and just beautiful thing. The Linux operating system, right? The many different flavors of it. There's really something worth experiencing out there if you've never used it. Just to live boot it and check it out. That's what got me to stick with Linux longer than I had to. But it's tough because even the games that I enjoy right now, today, I think are not among the Linux compatible games. I like Dungeon Hack for the from GOG Galaxy. That's not a Linux game. I play a lot of Quake. You can get that working in Linux, so there's that. And the last time I booted up Steam in Linux, I really wasn't getting very far. I have, let's see, I've got about 470 games in my Steam account that work on Linux, and I've got 1,805 games total. So, I mean,
I used to throw those numbers out there quite a lot. My Steam account takes quite a big hit when I load it up into Linux. But I'll tell you this much. When I was playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that ran better in Linux. I got more frames per second. I was getting 75 in Windows, and I was getting 100 FPS in Linux. And it would instantly alt-tab out and in, so that I could surf the internet when I was dead. Windows had a hard time with that. Now, you also asked, what is my favorite version of Windows? Probably Windows 7. Because it works and does everything I needed it to do. Windows 8, they started stripping features out, and I hated that whole Metro look that was popular. That absolutely just drove me up the wall. I hated it. I still hate it. I don't know much about Windows 10. I can't really comment on Windows 10, except that it lost a little bit of compatibility. Not as much as Windows 8 did, but a little bit less compatible with my game collection than Windows 7 is. And of course there's the privacy thing. But the reality is, of all those games, those 1800 plus Steam games, Windows 7 plays the largest portion of them, and that's why it's my choice operating system. That's why I'm still on it. So yeah, that could change in the future. My key just up and died on me one day that I bought, that I paid for. So when I load up Windows 7, it still says this copy of Windows is not genuine. So eventually I'm going to move out of it, but we'll see. About the Patreon podcast, I absolutely want to do something like that, some sort of supporters podcast. But I think as of right now, it's going to fly by the seat of its pants. It's not going to. I don't think there's going to be any sort of regular release date. But I can already see, this is an hour and 26 minutes in. I was considering just taking some of that and just cutting it from the show, just to try and get us down closer to an hour. And in an instance like that, every few months, I could be like, hey, we're going to have a party, and here's some stuff that didn't quite make it to TCR. I didn't do that this week because we haven't had a deluxe episode in a while, and I felt some of this stuff was really good. So even though it's long, I feel like there's some good stuff in here. Archon, definitely going to check it out. And you also talked about the Atari box. Here's the thing about the Atari box. We've seen two stages of Atari box, right? There was when it was announced, and there was an Indiegogo campaign, and everyone said this is not going to be a real console. This is going to be terrible. It's going to fail. Now there was the trailer, which told us a little bit more about it. So now we see a controller, right, that looks a lot like an Xbox 360 controller, an Xbox One controller, whatever your flavor is. And we know pretty much that's about it. So it seems like it's going to be a real console, which is more than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were never going to hear from Atari again. So the fact that it's a real console has surprised me in a positive way. That's 1 point for Atari. But we don't know anything about the games. And when it comes to consoles, it is all about the software, period. That's the reason why I favor the PC, is because of the software. So there's a chance that this could still be something good. We know it's going to have old classic Atari games preloaded on there, but you know what? That's not going to be what gets us to buy it. Show us some games, Atari. You never know. You never know. If it's priced right, I mean, we know it's going to be $250 to $300. That's a price point they said. But if we get the low end of that scale, $250, and they get some good software on it, they might have something. Is it going to be a huge contender? No, it won't. But they've surprised me for the positive once. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and wait for the next announcement. Maybe they'll be able to do it again. The Xbox games that I bought, yes, those were awesome. I wish I bought more. I took pictures of some games that I saw there that looked cool, but I didn't end up buying. And I was messing with those pictures here at home just a few minutes ago before going on the air. And I was like, why didn't I buy that? Specifically, let's see, Fear for Xbox 360 for 50 cents. Why didn't I buy that? What on earth possessed me to put that back on the shelf? I think it's because I was embarrassed, because I was with my wife and we were at a bookstore and I didn't want to walk out with a big giant stack of gaming related stuff. There was Tomb Raider 2, a CD-ROM edition for, what do they want for it? I got the picture here, $2.
There was this weird, skinny, unauthorized Tomb Raider 2 pocket guide, which I left. Oh, jeez. No, I'm really beating myself up. Excuse me, it was Fear 2 Project Origin for the Xbox 360 for 50 cents. I can't believe I left that there. Ghost Recon was one of the games I got, but there was the Ghost Recon strategy guide. Versus books, detailed maps, Ghost Recon official perfect guide. For $2, and I left that there, and I'm beating myself up. They also had I can't. Well, I guess that's. I had like a box version of Riven, not the big box, but like a little box of discs. I left that behind as well. Yeah, some good stuff. You know what else I left? I left the strategy guide, the Brady Games strategy guide for Saints Row 2. I liked Saints Row 2. That was a good game. I gotta go back there now. I gotta go back to that dang store. So let's... Ooh, were we getting static there and I didn't realize? Are we getting static now? Is that better? That's happened a couple times before where the static will pick up and I won't notice. And now I have to make a choice between losing all that audio reel and getting rid of the static or just leaving it in. In this case, I think I'm going to leave it in. I hope it wasn't going for too long. I'm really sorry about that. But there was a question that you opened the email with that said, we're talking about the comments I made about Nintendo leading the industry in abandoning old hardware. Do you think, he writes, that we would have seen a retro game revolution if the NES and SNES games had been solely digital games that were abandoned in the late 90s? That's a tricky question because the whole thing about digital distribution, I think a lot of that was just what they could and couldn't do with the technology at the time, because there were times in the past where they really wanted to try doing more with digital distribution. When I say they, I mean any one of the big gaming companies, right? The Sega had its what do you call it? The Sega Channel, where you could download. Sendu was telling me about this, where you could spend all day downloading a Sega game and play it for a while. That's probably the earliest example I can think of. But if they could have sold games to consoles over the dial-up internet in that way, I'm sure they would have. Right? Wasn't that what Nintendo was doing in Japan with the disc system? You could go to kiosks and buy downloadable games or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's a complicated system and a complicated question. I really don't know how things would have worked out differently. And what you also asked, will we still be able to play our Wii Virtual Console games after January 2019? Yes, we will. We'll still be able to play them, but you will not be able to go to the Virtual Console and download fresh copies. Remember that the Wii had very terrible hard drive space. So what you're going to have to do, and what I did, was I took everything off of my hard drive and put it all on an SD card. I copied every single game that I had onto my SD card. Then I downloaded everything I could and just made sure everything that was in my Wii library was downloaded and put on that SD card. And then I took all the games that I wanted to play and I copied them from the SD card back onto my machine. So I won't need to download anything anymore when the time comes and they shut down the store for good. I'll be okay. So, Hemrock, my man, thanks for the email. Much appreciated. And take care. Let's see. So, let's head back over to YouTube. See what other kind of comments we got over the last week. We're loading it up right now. Okay. So, it looks like the... I'm looking at the wave patterns as I'm talking to try and tell if I'm getting static or not. I think we're okay. All right, Sendu writes on my Talking Nintendo California Games video. Sendu writes, if you could have foreseen the setup back in 2011, you probably would have said very cool. What happened to that catchphrase? And as I said in my comment, I didn't realize that I used to say that all the time. Very cool, very cool. That was the thing I used to say. It just kind of faded away. I could say it again. But you're right. In 2011, when I was working off an old laptop, and my desk was half the size it was now, I couldn't imagine. All I wanted to play in 2011 was Team Fortress 2, and my computer couldn't run it, and it made me really upset. So I'm really thankful for what I have now, man. Let's be thankful for our blessings.
Very important. All right, Bert Shell writes, Borderbound was the original developer and publisher of Lode Runner. However, Hudson Soft did the NES port, and is an Easter egg seen after beating Bomberman, which, my friend, I saw recently for the first time based on your comment. I went to the Bomberman. I looked up Bomberman ending on YouTube, and I saw the ending of the Nintendo game, and it's like, Bomberman, you've helped Bomberman become a real human being. What other Hudson game does he show up in? And you see Lode Runner run across the screen. So they're implying that you play through the Bomberman game so that Bomberman can become a real person. Then he becomes a real person, and that real person is the Lode Runner. So that's what they're implying. It was pretty neat. It was actually really neat to see. Kaiser Cade writes on the unboxing of Ace of Spades from Motorhead. He writes, "Love Me Like a Reptile is a personal favorite of mine on that album." I'll tell you what, Kaiser, I like that song too, and I think it's because I heard Ace of Spades, the song, a million billion times when I was playing through Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. It's a good song, but it's the first track on that album and the one track that I'm familiar with. "Love Me Like a Reptile" was the first song from Motorhead that I heard off of one of their albums, that after looking them up and listening to their music to really try and give them a shot. That was the first song that wasn't Ace of Spades. So I kind of dig that track as well. It's a really good one. That's a great album. It really is. I like the one at the end that they do. It's like the second to last track that they did with Girls School. I can't think of what it's called, but that's a good track as well. All right, so let's go to Dumays. I'm trying to think back to when you told me how to pronounce that, and I can't remember, and I'm really sorry. So sorry about that. He writes, what was it? What am I talking Nintendo videos? Which one? Hang with me for 1 second. I think it's Deadly Towers. Yeah, it is. Deadly Towers. He writes, "I really liked this back in the day when I rented it. My requirements were not as strict as they are today, with less options, though. Although I didn't buy it, maybe I would feel different. But I rented it, and I had my fun with it for maybe 5 or 6 hours, and had a blast. Reminded me of Zelda 1, whereas Link has full of hearts, throwing a sword all over it was cool. Big maze, trying to find your way around, good times. Maybe if I tried it now, I wouldn't like it. I didn't even know people generally thought it was bad until after AVGN did his video on it. Well, here's the thing, man. I think there's a good game in there. They just didn't finish with this game. There was a thing about you throw this little knife, and the damage that it deals is not balanced very well. Like, there's these little green blob things, and you have to throw the knife like 20 times to get them to kill them. So there's that, and then there's these shops you go to, where you go to this room, like on the map, and it's a big empty room, and you walk to the middle, and you just disappear into a shop. Now, you can tell they were going to draw something there. Apart from those types of issues, it's a neat little game. The hero that you play as is cool, the maps look cool, the monsters look cool. There's a lot of good things that can be said about Deadly Towers. As far as AVGN is concerned, I think there are certain times in the NES library in particular where the AVGN was just doing his shtick, and in doing so, he kind of turned public opinion on certain games. I think the classic example is Castlevania 2. Castlevania 2 is an alright game. It's got its faults, but it's okay. It's a good game. Then AVGN did his shtick on it, and there's a lot of people who think poorly of it now, not because of the game, not because of their memories with the game, but because of James and his work, which is fine, but it's something to bear in mind. I try and remember that, especially in a case like Deadly Towers, where all he did in his video was just read emails. Alright, this is kind of an interesting one. This guy, Neville, left a comment on my ZZT video, an old MS-DOS game. But this is what he writes. "Hi, I wrote because the video cleaning out old chess books. I'm from Italy, and I was wondering if you could give me any information about the chessboard that appears in that video. Brand or something useful to find a similar one. I love that design, and I find it so beautiful." I read this because that was a chessboard that I got. It was $10 at the thrift store, which, thinking back, is a lot for a chessboard from a thrift store. And I got it because I needed a beater board that, we could really use with my kids and teach them how to play the game. And it ended up being my favorite thing. That was my favorite board. And then my daughter finally sat on it or something and split it in half. Broke my heart. I still have it. Hopefully I can use a little wood glue and get it back together. Some wood glue and some clamps. You know, you'd be surprised what kind of things you can accomplish with just some basic household tools. But yeah, it was from the thrift store. It had no distinguishing brand names or any marks like that on it. It was very weird. Let's see. Dr. Josh, the real gamer, writes on the Sega Genesis flashback thing. He says, "You almost did better than me. I have 2 videos of it." Very well done, my friend. Desm, on the last podcast episode, 288, writes, "Bummed I missed out on those Konami Rebirth games. I haven't bought a Nintendo console that is not portable since SNES." And then he gives a time signature, 36 minutes and 47 seconds. Dude, that's an awesome story. I was in high school when that Offspring came out. So damn good. I was in a band and we covered that song. That was it, man. Offspring was like the first the first, I think, really awesome band that I was into. Let's see, is that it? Is that the only comment I got? It is. It's the only comment from last week. That is quite alright. It's quite alright with me, my man. Desm, my boy. Always good to hear from you. Let's see. We got a couple other ones. I can see people working through the backlog, which is pretty cool. One on the Tiger Electronics video I made, which is quickly becoming one of my most popular videos. Ozzy Robbie writes, "Scummy how Watch Mojo basically stole your footage and didn't even credit you." Yeah, it is scummy. It's actually something I'm really upset about. Not only did they not credit me, but when that video first came out, I left a comment that said, "Hey, I'm in this video. I wasn't asked or credited." And that got thumbed up 150 plus times and became the #1 comment. So much so that traffic actually came in from it. So I probably got more traffic from that than I would have if they credited me. But they deleted my comment. So like, it was a negative thing that I was able to turn into a positive thing. But then they made it an even more negative thing. So that's Watch Mojo for you. What are you going to do? Then we got a few from Sendu, who writes, "I have 3 Saturns. One of them is a semi-working disk drive I don't use anymore. If you want to flash drive mod it, we can work something out." That would be cool, man. I would be interested in that. I want to figure out how much the mods cost, and how feasible it is to actually put one in, and then we'll take a look at it. That would be awesome. Yeah, I think we read these last week, and then you're right. You keep saying Drive Time is at the name of a dealership, maybe for sponsorship. Yeah, those are last week's comments. So that's it. We're, oh jeez, I'm so tired. We're 1 minute. Wow, yeah. It's time to wrap it up, boys and girls. We're 1 hour and 42 minutes in. I like these long ones. They remind me of the old Gooch and the Douchebag shows. Those were like 2+ hours every single time they did one. But be that as it may, it's time to wrap it up for the week. Again, shouts out to Player One from the Cartridge Brothers. Best of luck in your deployment. I hope all goes well and you make it back home safe and sound and ready to play a ton of video games. For the rest of you guys out there, just keep doing what you do, man. I'm rooting for you real hard over here. Just wishing you the best this next week, and I'll see you next Monday.
Bye, Hadasan!